18.
So thank you so much for joining with us and congratulations. The first set of bids have been received in terms of the preliminary interest in IDBI Bank stake sale. So give us a sense of what has been the response. We know at times it's difficult for the government to actually divulge details, but give us a sense, like when you say multiple, what does that really mean?
Well, I think the transaction advisor, he has advised that there's been good response. So we don't, as per our process, we don't reveal the names and the number for maintaining integrity of our bidding process. So I would not be in a position to tell you the number on the names, but suffices to say there's a good response.
Good response, multiple bids. So, at least at our end, we can safely assume that at least 3 and more bids have come in. And again, in terms of the potential sectors which are represented, mainly banks, non-banks, or is it a healthy mix?
Well, it's a healthy mix, both domestic and foreign.
Excellent, sir. Excellent. So what is the next in terms of the process now going forward? Would you be inviting the financial bids pretty soon, or it will have its own timeline?
After the initial bids come in, there is a question of checking the bids and the papers, which the transaction advisor does. Also, there is a fit and proper in this case involved right in the beginning with the RBI.
You've done that at the UIS stage as well?
Yeah, this is the stage at which it will be done by the RBI.
Now that the bids have come in?
Once the bids are coming in. And accordingly, I think they will be submitting papers to, the qualified ones will be submitting papers to the RBI. We have a virtual data room, then it will be opened under the non-disclosure undertaking, where there will be sufficient material which is not in public domain. In respect of that, there will be greater amount of information that will be made available to the bidders. And also subsequently, the draft share purchase agreement and other definitive documents, the drafts of that will be shared for their response. So this is what is called a due diligence process. Once that's completed, then the RFP is issued for the invite of the financial.
Correct. So how long do you expect this due diligence to last? How many months? And when do you actually plan to call the financial bids? Will it be after the due diligence process, or maybe by March?
Well, the timing actually does depend on transaction to transaction. It depends upon the complexity of the transaction, the nature of this, whether the site visits are to be planned, whether, what kind of assets a transaction in that particular company has. So it depends. This is a bank. I think it's more like in the nature of financial information and accounting information, not in terms of as much on the physical aspects. But nevertheless, I think 3 to 4 months is a minimum time which is required for due diligence process.
Okay. So you will be inviting the financial bids only post that?
That's right.
Okay. And you will be well into the new financial year by then. So a tentative timeline would be sometime closing the transaction, maybe by next Jan, sir? Or even before that?
I think that will be much earlier than that, but it will be in FY24, but it will be, I think, much earlier than that.
Okay, so maybe before the current calendar year closes.
Let us hope, and we'll keep you informed how it goes.
Right, right. So you mentioned foreign, domestic both. So do you think, in hindsight, the fact that you gave 3 very clear categories: banks, NBFCs, PE firms, all of them can come in, and a lot of work was done between you and RBI and the other regulators. So you think that is now kind of paying dividends and will pay dividends in the months to come?
I think that right from beginning our effort has been, since this is the first transaction of its kind, to give sufficient clarity and also make it as larger, as open a process to have competitive bidding. See, key to our process, I've been always stressing, is the availability of competitive bids, the size of the transaction, where most people will be find comfortable. So we don't design our process for one or two players, but for a larger number of players, so there's a greater amount of bidding, and then there is obviously, we would like the maximum amount of, maximization of our value of shares. This is, these shares in the government, for example, belong to the government of India. And of course, LIC shares, LIC has its own shareholders and policy holders and so on. So it's very important for us that we do the process in a competitive manner and we discover the best value.
So that's what is now going to unfold. I mean, the process is going to be, the bidding is going to be competitive. We can expect that.
Yes, please.
Okay. Sir, in the past, sometimes, check me if I'm wrong, there were certain discussions way back, 5-6 years back, and there was some indication that maybe around, 80 to 85 would have been a good bid, and we really don't know what happened post that. So what I'm just trying to ask probably is that whatever was there in the past, will that also be a factor for the government to decide, the pricing of the bids as and how the process unfolds? Or you think that this is a fresh, clean slate and, whatever comes forward and whatever the reserve price the government decides at a later point in time, that is how it's going to be. The past is not going to cast a shadow.
So this is a price discovery process. So we are out in the market to discover the price rather than the other way around. We don't determine the price and do it. The benchmarking price or the reserve price is only an internal process for us to satisfy ourselves that, we are not really, in a way selling it, very below par. But what exactly is the price is for the market to discover. And a competitive bidding process ensures that. Besides, any company, what it is, what is its value, keeps on changing, as you know, in a dynamic economy very fast. It depends upon, it not necessarily only depends upon the past, but it's a lot to do with future. Its present context and its future setting. So it's a very complex process, as you know, and that's the reason why people, different bidders would value it differently. Even though, technically speaking, we have the same quantitative processes in investment banking. But the fact that, the people attach different value to different price, because essentially the valuation or price at the end of the day is also a subjective thing based on assumptions about the future.
Okay. So one or two concerns over here, some experts or rather in some quarters there is this impression that, the legacy NPAs of IDBI Bank could still be a concern. Aging of NPAs, of course, the provisioning norms come down, but that could still be an overhang. What is the government's take on this? Could this be a stumbling block in the times to come? Maybe not, looking at the way you have got a good response, quote unquote, on the preliminary bid so far.
I don't think so, because I think a lot of work has already been done on the health of the IDBI Bank over a period of time, not only in terms of capitalization, which was done, but also the the net NPA is what counts, and that has been very, very
so you don't think that overhang is going to be there? Okay. So also, you have been now, post-divestment, your share in IDBI will be counted as public shareholding. SEBI has given clarity on that front. There are certain terms and conditions attached to that. So would the GOI be meeting all of those? You will not have a seat on the board. You will not have, voting rights have so far been defined by SEBI. So are you going to meet all those 3-4 terms and conditions?
If you have read it correctly, that was initially our proposal. That was basically our proposal, because it is the government, when it's mindful that if it is wanting it to be, sort of designated as public, that doesn't mean, you can't be a promoter and the public at the same time. So it's clearly we are getting off the promotership, and that was our proposal, which the SEBI has agreed.
Okay. So what about LIC? We're given to understand that LIC probably also has made a pitch in terms of treating their shareholding as public. We don't really know what has been the response so far. So is it on board? Is it not on board? Has SEBI rejected or accepted? And either ways, how does that really look?
I think that's not really a very important issue,
Why?
because LIC, if maybe LIC in future would be public when it brings down the shareholding to a certain level, which SEBI wants it to. So it's for the government that we wanted to be very clear about, because there I think whether to be director, whether to have director or not to have a director. Now, LIC is at the end of the day is there in different companies. Of course, when it is there in different companies as an investor, it has to bring it down to a certain level. And if it is exceeding a level, maybe at that level it might not be granted a public status. But in future, yes, when they bring because both LIC and government do not intend to stay on there. It's only an interim arrangements that we are there as a financial investor, both in terms of the size of the transaction that it would mean, also because of the upside that we might like to take it in post this investment.
Okay.
So in both cases, I think both LIC and government, they would like eventually to exit in a time frame which will be defined in future.
Okay, but basically as of now, has the regulator given clarity on LIC's pitch, sir? Anything you could share with us?
No, that's not the concern. I think the government was wanting to push its own thing, and therefore their proposal has been agreed to.
Okay, okay. So LIC's pitch probably was not a material concern. What was material was the government's pitch. Got that. Also, sir, you have also amended the SERA rules in terms of the minimum public shareholding norms. SEBI's note so far says IDBI Bank post divestment will have to meet the MPS norms within 1 year. But at the same time, government has amended the rules on the other hand. So how do you see both of them panning out? And will you be giving a clarity on extension or exemption from MPS, any kind of a deadline that you're looking at? So far the timeline has not been expressed. And will that overrule what SEBI has brought out, that 1 year timeline to meet MPS for IDBI Bank?
See, the SCRA rule is a generic thing. It doesn't really, it's not really only for the IDBI Bank. It's in general for the government, a certain category where the government has substantial holding, or the public sector companies have the substantial holdings. There, it is basically sometimes meeting
for other banks and
public
PSBs and CPSCs which are not.
Yes, I mean, sometimes it becomes difficult for them to achieve MPS in a time frame in which is required. Also because, as a government undertakings and all that, some may not be doing well, and if in order to do that, they may not be takers, for example, for some. In some cases, for example, a reverse thing has happened where government had to recapitalize. So even something like IDBI Bank, which was an MPS earlier, it had to slip into a non-MPS category. So there are different things which emerge, and I think in order to meet that eventuality, and that is not really a general blanket thing, it's only a power to exempt case by case, and also for a particular period.
Right. So what is that going to be?
So only the notification has the new rules have made it clear that number one, I mean, it's clarified the language which was already there since 2021. Secondly, I think an explanation has also been added that it will not really disrupt this strategic disinvestment process in certain cases. For example, if you have given this one fine morning, if it gets out and doesn't fit into that public sector definition, then it can't lose the thing, and it has to have a transition period which was granted earlier in the first place. So because that is granted to a company, to an entity, and it is not to whether the ownership now based on ownership change, all of a sudden overnight, if you do that, that will be unfair.
Okay.
And I think that is the eventuality which has been onboarded. And SCRA rules, in fact, takes away, it's a generic rules, and within that, a specific notification that needs to be issued.
So what is the kind of deadline that you're thinking of in terms of extension of the of meeting the MPS norms?
No, I mean, that will be, it will be there. As on date, in fact, IDBI Bank enjoys that exemption.
Till 2024.
So, I mean, it will be really clarified in due course. as to which is the period in which MPS must be met.
IDBI Bank, along with the subsidiaries and associates, is being divested. Is that what you have proposed, or it's going to be a separate exercise?
No, I think at this moment that's the one.
Okay, okay. Together, subsidiaries and associates along with the main bank. Okay, sir. Sir, also just want to understand on a philosophical level, what would be the government's preference? Would it be more in terms of PE investors, who may look upon the entire deal transaction as more of a financial investment or financial returns rather than a strategic player like banks? What would be the preference of the government? On a very philosophical level, I want to ask this.
There is no philosophy into it and there is no preference into it. Once we have defined our rules of the game, once we have given that everyone is in equal footing, and whosoever will bid the highest will get it. So there is in any competitive bidding process is no question of a choice here. When we have said that these are the equals, within the equals, whosoever actually bids the highest gets it.
Okay, and so in case it's a PE that is interested, I'm just asking hypothetically over here. So do they have to come in the form of a consortia, because you will need somebody to drive the bank, right? Could you explain something on that front to us?
No, that has not been our structure.
Okay.
Even any PE can also come in singly, which was.
Okay.
So the consortium was, was not a mandatory requirement.
Okay. Fine.
One could come as a consortium, but not as a mandatory requirement.
Okay. Okay. And in case it's a bank, then of course, they will have their own license at the moment. IDBI has a deemed license. So how does that work, sir?
No, the licensing has been made very clear that, if it were a bank which were to bid, then there will be only one license post as investment. So there has to be a merger.
Okay. Okay, sir. Right, sir. Right. So also in terms of, the way the markets have been, one question that is probably asked frequently is the fact that when, private promoters have done so well in terms of divesting their own stakes, big numbers are being given out. Could the government have been more proactive on its disinvestment agenda, sir? What would be your assessment and your response?
The government has been always telling that we will go for a calibrated way of disinvestment, keeping in mind the minority shareholders' interests, which are also there. So, and in case of privatization, of course, where the management control is passed, it has to be again, in a calibrated way when a transaction is announced, and then we try to take it to a logical, conclusion to the bidding process.
Okay, calibrated is the watchword there. Also, sir, in terms of your residual stake in Secy, would you be selling out from ITC? If yes, what is the rough plan on that front? If not, sir, why not?
No, I think Secy, there is a administrators. Then there are they look into it, and from time to time they take decisions. So I am not really responding that when and what, and again, as much as we would not really like to reveal when and what, and we will like to come to an OFS or try to disinvest.
Or a block
well,
deals.
I think we have to meet with the SEBI norms and act accordingly.
Okay. So would you be in principle closed towards selling further stake in ITC, or in principle not really? Open-ended but not decided?
No, I would not like to comment on these specific things.
Okay, okay. So also in terms of the big strategic disinvestments now, how do you see the coming financial year? Do we understand that of course IDBI would be the big one, along with probably Shipping Corporation, Concord. Give us an idea, give us an assessment of how you're looking at the new financial year.
We are all looking for the ongoing transactions which are at different stages. They should be concluded as per the process, and I think that is what we would like to do.
Okay, but any particular ones, particularly that you are very hopeful of?
No, I think I am hopeful of all of them.
Correct, correct. So no order of preference in that.
No, there's no question of a preference. It's a
Right.
cabinet mandate,
Right.
and certain things are announced, and I think we must carry them forward
Right.
and conclude them.
Right. So specifically speaking on SCI and BML, could you just share with us what is the current status? And, are you still very hopeful of BML going forward? Because again, some people have been saying, some quarters are saying that maybe, not very sure whether the bidders are still in the race or not. Could you give your assessment?
No, our transaction advisors inform us that we are all, moving forward. And of course, I think in BML case, even the demerger process has also been done, and only now listing remains. And the same thing is about NMDC Steel, where demerger has been done, a listing remains. And in SCI, the demerger order is awaited.
Okay.
So these are the kind of things which require demerger
Okay.
because of hiving of non-core assets, which was a requirement. And I think it took really time around it, but we will definitely move forward post that.
Okay. So you may be calling for the financial bids by March end sometime? Or maybe slip into the financial...
Well, I would say that it will depend upon when they're ready and transaction advisor advises and the listing happens. Yes.
So there's also talk about MMTC, the fact that the government is very close to finalizing the closure of MMTC. Could you please give us an idea about where we stand on that front? And there are a couple of companies the government has been looking for a period of time in terms of closure. So anything that you would like to share, sir?
No, there is nothing as far as MMTC is concerned yet.
Okay, okay. But there have been reports saying that...
There could be reports, but reports are there all the time, but
Okay.
not to my knowledge.
Okay. So also another, talking point has been government's plan to sell off stake in fertilizer companies, being the non-strategic sector. So could you share something with us on that front? I mean, there was a lot of buzz around 6 odd months back, but then we're not hearing much on that front. Now and then the issue keeps cropping up. So anything that you'd like to share, sir? Is it still on, not on?
Again, I'm not really aware, whether any such thing is there. I think media keeps speculating. You have right to speculate because once you have new PSC policy, you will keep on speculating. But there is no such thing yet.
Okay, sir. And sir, one of the last questions, how do you look at your pipeline for FY24, both in terms of OFSs and strategic sales are full, your bag is going to be full on that front. But how do you see the coming financial year going forward? And I know, the government is very clear that divestment aim is one thing, but actually doing the work on the ground is another thing. But how do you look at the whole thing? What about your numbers? Is there pressure to meet them? And would you like the targets to be modest, moderate, or realistic? Anything that you can share with us?
I can only say that Honorable Finance Minister will announce the budget and we will carry forward. And we have been, whatever ongoing transactions, we move forward on that.
Okay. Okay, fine. Nothing in terms of the numbers should be realistic or modest or moderate or nothing of that kind. Right, sir. Thank you very much for giving time to CNBC-TV18. We'll keep coming back to you for more inputs. Thank you very much.
Friends.